Hi, Harry here. Welcome to the process. Thought I'd start out this first video by explaining this little home electrolyser thing that I've built. You stick it into water and it'll generate hydrogen and oxygen gas when you supply power to it. I built one of these things back in June for a school fair. Generated some oxyhydrogen gas and make some cool explosions.
Nothing's happening! Don't worry.
Yeah, so I thought it was really cool and I decided to try and build one for myself. I did a bit of research and found that the stainless steel plates that I'd been using are actually really bad for electrolysis, because when you generate oxygen using electrolysis of water with a stainless steel plate, you actually generate toxic chromium compounds that disperse into the water. They're carcinogenic and poisonous and really not very nice. So I got some regular old steel, put it in this container. This one was generating hydrogen, and this was the one that was generating oxygen. I don't know if you can see, but it's really corroded and it doesn't look very nice anymore. This ended up wrecking it because all the rust particles had just dispersed into the water and made it all gunky and was less conductive, and then the gases wouldn't flow properly. It did generate some gas though, and I tried burning some, but after leaving it in plastic bags for over a few days, the hydrogen seems to lose its potency a bit. I don't know what's happening there. Anyway, the setup that I had with this was I had these two plates side by side in the container like this, ran some current through it, and I had some PVC pipe going over each one, collecting the gases and then bubbling through some bubblers that I'm still actually using on the final design. Anyway, the gases bubble through some water here and then come out this tube. Anyway, this setup did work. I did bubble some gases through and get them into plastic bags. It was very messy though, and the water just kept filling with rust. So I decided to move to these graphite rods as the anodes, generating oxygen, because I thought they wouldn't oxidize as well as steel. Turns out though that while they were originally looking like that, after I used them in the electrolyser, they became kind of like that, or like this. And it just wasn't very nice. It dispersed all this black carbon into the water, and it had the same problem. Anyway, this carbon setup did actually work pretty well to begin with. I got a fair bit of gas off it. Still not enough to make the plastic bag that I was using float, but I did get a lot of gas, maybe 10-20 litres. That was until the same thing happened, and the current that I was drawing off the power supply would just taper off, and then it wouldn't generate any hydrogen anymore. Anyway, it was at this point that I did a bit more research and found that Cody's lab had actually built a really similar device using PVC pipe and lead plates. Lead works really well to generate oxygen because the oxide that it forms when it oxidizes is actually conductive itself, and it doesn't ruin the water, it doesn't ruin the conductivity, and it just keeps generating oxygen and lets the cathode keep generating hydrogen without slowing down at all. What I've got here, you can see the kind of reddish brown colour of the lead oxide, and then I'm using carbon as the hydrogen generation cathode. Anyway, the gases bubble up through these things and bubble through these pipes through the water and come out here, which I can collect with any plastic bag or something like this. Anyway, I've done it before a fair few times. I've generated maybe 50 litres so far. Anyway, I thought this setup with the lead was really great because I was generating lots of hydrogen and it was working really well. But the thing is, I was using sodium hydroxide as an electrolyte, which doesn't work very well when you're using lead as an anode because lead's actually soluble in sodium hydroxide solutions. And I found that the lead was actually electroplating across to the carbon when I turned it on, and it just built up and got really messy. Had to switch to sodium carbonate, which was, while less soluble, a better electrolyte because the lead wasn't electroplating onto the carbon. Anyway, this setup worked really well with the lead plate and the sodium carbonate electrolyte because I was able to generate a lot of hydrogen, and I finally actually filled a bag up so that it was able to float. Just a few days ago I made this little hand pump for pumping the gas into balloons because you can't use electric pumps because the electric motors inside them actually produce small sparks that could ignite the hydrogen. You connect your bag up this end and a balloon up here, and you squeeze it, and I've got some one-way valves on each end, and you can pump up the balloon. Bye. Anyway, this setup works really well, so I'll show you how I've got it all connected. I'll grab this. You can see I've got fabric down here with the electrodes to stop any bubbles from escaping across but allow the current to flow. Anyway, I'll stick it into this small electrolyte chamber within this coolant bath that I've made just with regular water, and I'll connect up the electrics. Anyway, what I've got here is a switch connected to the cathode, and the anode just connected directly to the power supply. What I've got in parallel with the switch is some little clips for my multimeter, which I can then measure the current with. I'll do that now as I'm turning it on. So when I turn off the switch, the current's flowing through my multimeter, giving me the current reading. When I switch it on, the current's just going straight through the electrolyzer. Anyway, let's plug it in, turn it on, and see that the power supply's on. You can see here that I've got around 3 amps flowing initially. That should build up to around 5 amps, generating a bit over 2 litres an hour of hydrogen. You can see nothing's really changing. All the gases are bubbling up these pipes and coming out here. Now let's connect up the bag. And now that should start generating hydrogen and bubbling it through this and into here. Let's check the current again. Right, already getting 3.2 amps. That's good, that means it's rising. Should eventually reach 5 amps, but that'll take a while. We'll come back in a few hours or so, see how much it's generated. Alright, here we are 2 and a bit hours later. You can see we've got a fair bit of hydrogen. I haven't put a bag on the oxygen one, but we should have generated around half that amount. If we check the current now, you can see that it's drawing 4 amps now, built up a fair bit from 3 amps before. If I left it going for hours on end, it'd eventually reach 5 amps, but right now, it's, what is it, 3.95? We'll make a few future videos on this, the chemistry behind it, some experiments with hydrogen, and maybe some updates to the build. See you next time.